Hi, I'm Christina and today I'm going to talk about all the books that I have DNF'd recently. So we're now in the month of June when I'm filming this and I now have my first DNF of June, and that is The Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. Now this is a brand new book published just very recently in 2022 and it's her sixth novel, but it's my first book by her and I know she is an absolute booktube darling. So many people seem to love Station 11 and The Glass Hotel, and yeah, she's so beloved, and I just wanted to see what I was missing out on, basically. And I have to say, it's just not for me. So I was going into this one knowing that it was science fiction, knowing that it was about time travel, and I was really intrigued and I was really looking forward to a great science fiction book. I was just really in the mood for it. And this one was just, it was just kind of dull. So I read the first 50 pages in one sitting, and the first part that we see is set in 1912 and our main character is called Edwin. And I wasn't particularly interested in his story, I wasn't particularly interested in anything about him, to be honest, but I knew that we were going to get to another section, so I just carried on. But then the next section we got to was it in 2020? Yeah, it was in 2020, so set in the pandemic, two more characters, and again, I wasn't particularly interested in them, even in the slightest at all. So I thought I could keep going, but I am trying to get better this year at just putting down books that I have no interest in. I literally read the first 50 pages and I didn't feel anything at all for the characters or for where it was going. I thought the first character of Edwin was like really boring and I just was not interested at all in where he was going. And yeah, it's just not for me. So I'm not saying that she's definitely not for me as an author. I'm definitely interested in reading Station 11 because there's so much buzz about it and I just want to know, what I'm missing out on. But honestly, this was just, and also just, I didn't think the writing style was very good. Sometimes you pick up a book and you read the first page and it's just so well written and you just think it's so beautiful and you're really into reading it. But I read the first page and I just thought it was fine. And then I read the next page and that was just fine. I feel like she doesn't write as beautifully as I really like, and that might sound a bit mean. It just kind of seems a bit general. I don't know. It didn't really like drag me into the story or grip me with its characters. I was just like, oh yeah, this is fine. And then I thought I could just keep reading it, and I thought, but this is just fine, and you don't really care what happens to anyone, so why even bother? So, so after that, I'm just putting it down. And yeah, that's the end of that one. If you have read it, I would really love to know what you thought of it. I had a little look on Goodreads and it seems to be getting so much buzz, 4 stars, 5 stars all round. A couple of outliers with maybe a 2-star or DNF like me, but most people seem to be really enjoying this. So yeah, I'd love to know what you thought of it. I just don't think it's one for me. And I think when your interest is so low at that stage of 50 pages in, I'm just trying to learn to put it down because it probably just ended up being like a 2-star anyway. So that was that one, the first book I've DNF'd in June. So I do have a part 1 for this video for 2022, all the books that I DNF'd between January and the end of May. So I will link that down below just in case you really like, you know, rant reviews, DNFs, that will be there. So yeah, we'll see what's the next book I'm going to DNF. So the next book that I've DNF'd is Do Not Feed the Bear by Rachel Elliott. And I read about 50 pages of this one and it was just not my cup of tea at all. Now, I had read her most recent novel, her 3rd novel, Flamingo, this year, and I absolutely adored that book and it was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. It was a definite 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed it, and I will link my review of it down below just in case you'd like to hear my more detailed thoughts on it. And I was hoping for much of the same when I read this one, but it just felt completely different. So basically, like I said, I'd read 50 pages and just so many characters had been introduced, so many different names, and I was finding it really difficult to follow what was actually happening and who anybody was. And then we started playing around in time as well, and there was no indication of which character's perspective we were actually reading from, or what time period we were reading from, and I had to go back to the start of the chapter and read a couple of paragraphs again, just to kind of focus myself on who am I actually hearing from, who are all of these characters. So that was something I wasn't really enjoying. I wasn't really following it very well. And then it got to the stage where we had a pet dog as a narrator, and I just really didn't like the way it was written. Just the tone of it felt really off to me, and I wasn't gelling with the story at all. And I just DNF'd it because I thought I'm probably not gonna really enjoy this, to be honest. And then after I decided to put the book down, I had a little look at some other people's reviews, and some people did really enjoy it, but a lot of people had similar, similar thoughts as me, as there are just way too many characters. And yeah, definitely moving around between characters and time periods without any type of letting you know was definitely tricky. And I saw quite a few people who did finish the book say that they really didn't like it and it was disappointing, but then some people did say that it really wrapped itself up well in the end. But I'm glad I put it down, because just the whole tone of it was just, you know, when you're just not interested anymore and you're just kind of like, oh. It got to the stage where at the page 50 mark, I was intending to read for about another half an hour or so before I went to bed. And I got to that section and I just kind of put the book down. I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go to bed now because I don't want to read it anymore. So yeah, that's where I was with that one. I'm definitely interested in reading her debut novel though, which is Whispers Through a Megaphone, because like I say, her third novel, Flamingo, adored that story. Didn't like this one, DNF this one. So maybe a little bit of a hit and miss author for me at the moment, but definitely going to read her debut novel and definitely going to pick up whatever she writes next, because Flamingo was wonderful. Honestly, one of my favourite books of 2022. So yeah, it was a shame I didn't like this one. And so many comparisons between this one and Eleanor Oliphant and Sarah Winman, the author of Tin Man, which I also loved, but I don't think it's anything like Eleanor Oliphant, to be honest, or anything like Tin Man. So that was a disappointment because I was so excited to read this one. I got a nice selection of books out from my library and I was so excited to read this one, but never mind. So that was that one. So the next book I've DNF'd is Miss Benson's Beetle by Rachel Joyce. So this one is a historical fiction novel and it starts in 1910 when our main character Marjorie is 10 years old. Now I have to say it had such a gripping opening. I was absolutely hooked in the beginning. I started reading it and I thought this is going to be such a lovely, gentle, charming kind of story, and then within the first few pages I was like, goodness me, what just happened? And it just completely came out of left field, and I thought it was such a great beginning to a story. And I've read quite a lot of this one. I've read 214 pages, which is more than half, so I was thinking I'm just going to push through. I'm just going to finish this one because I'm more than halfway, but I just started to really not enjoy it anymore. So the main concept of it really is a lovely one. We have our main character Marjorie, and she is a school teacher and she doesn't really enjoy her job at all. She doesn't really have any friends, she doesn't have any family left alive, and she doesn't really have any joy in her life at all. Now the one thing that she absolutely loved as a child was beetles, and it all stems from the time that her father shows her a book of mythical creatures, and he talks about the golden beetle of New Caledonia, and it's this tiny little beetle that is completely gold and nobody has ever discovered it. It's in a book full of creatures like the Loch Ness Monster and all of those kind of things, Bigfoot, you name it, they're all in there. And she just has this obsession with this little beetle, which stems into a passion for all beetles, technically. And then later on in life, when she's 46 years old, she decides that she's going to go and do it. She's going to do her dream. She's going to try and find this beetle. The one thing she does need is an assistant, and she needs a French speaking assistant because she doesn't speak French. So she advertises in the local newspaper for somebody, and she doesn't get a very good response. I think she only gets 4 responses, one of which is just completely misspelled, and she doesn't even bother replying to her. So the person that enters her life is called Enid Pretty, and she's a really interesting character that you couldn't find more chalk and cheese characters. You have Marjorie, who's, you know, she's 46, she's this one, she's always dressed in brown. Brown is her favourite colour. And then we have Enid, who is only 25, she's always in like bright pink clothing, bright blonde hair, lots of makeup, very, very different women. And they start to build a kind of unlikely friendship, I suppose you could say, while they're looking for this beetle. And they spend a lot of time building this relationship, exploring, and there's lots of like stops and starts. Are they ever going to get to where they want to go? And I was enjoying it, like I said, and then halfway through it got a little bit too twee for me, I think. That's the word I would use. It's very, very twee, and I don't think I can just handle that level of it. I was just kind of checking out from it. And the more we got into it, the more it felt unlikely that the character of Enid would actually be able to do all of these things that were put in her way. It was just seemed very, very unlikely. And it just started to lose my interest. So I did just put it down. And my dad read this one before me, and I knew he'd found it a little bit disappointing towards the end, and it got to the stage where I was like, you know what, I don't think I want to read this anymore. And I did just ask him to spoil the rest of the book for me. And I have to say that I'm glad that I put this one down, because honestly it sounded like it was going nowhere good. I don't think I was going to enjoy where it was going. I think it was going to get even more fanciful and really not have a great payoff. So when I got to this stage, all the way through I was thinking this is going to be a really nice, good, solid 3-star read. And it's getting to the stage I was thinking this is probably going to be dropping down into a 2-star read. And I thought, what is the point in reading this? It's probably going to take me maybe a week to read the rest of this book. I'm not the fastest of readers, so I was thinking, no, I want to put it down and I want to spend some time reading something that I'm really excited about, because there's so many books out there that I'm really excited to read. So yeah, that was that one. A bit of a disappointment. It's not an awful book, it's just not a book for me. So I don't think I'm massively interested in picking up any of her other stories anytime soon. I know that the one here, The Unlikely Pilgrimage of Harold Fry, is very popular. I mean, maybe one day, but I think probably not. So yeah, that was that one. A little bit of a disappointment. If you have read it, I'd love to know what you thought of it. If you've read any of her other novels, I'd love to know, are any of them maybe better than this, or maybe a little bit less twee? I'd love to know what you thought of them if you've read any of her other stories. So yeah. So the next book that I've DNF'd is The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. So when I actually initially put this one down, it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and since then it has since won the Women's Prize for Fiction. And when I put it down, I was just kind of bored of it, for want of a better word. It just really kind of lost my interest. The more that I was reading, the more that my interest was waning, and I've read quite a decent amount of it actually. I've read exactly 200 pages, which is, you know, it's nearly halfway, and I thought I should just keep going, see where it's going to go, and, you know, see what's going to happen. But I just really wasn't enjoying it at all. And then when it won the Women's Prize for Fiction, I thought I will definitely pick it up again. I'm going to give it another go. I want to see what's so great about it. Everybody, you know, loads of people are loving it. But honestly, I just don't think this is a book for me at all, which is a shame. I just had no particular interest in it anymore. So it's basically about a boy and his mother, and they're both grieving for their father and their husband, and it's just kind of watching their life and seeing how they're struggling with this grief and how they're trying to move forward, and also how their mental health problems are affecting their day-to-day lives. So the mother is grieving a lot, she's turning a lot to food, and she has a kind of hoarding situation, and she very much struggles to let go of items, and she's always acquiring new items, and it's getting to a stage where they can't even live safely in their house. And also because of her job, she cuts out newspaper clippings, and she has to keep like a record of all of these different clippings for a certain amount of time. So she does have like bin bags full of just newspaper clippings, like tons and tons of them, but she does need those for her job, but it just kind of spirals. And we also have the boy Benny, and he is struggling obviously with his mental health in a kind of different way. He's hearing voices of inanimate objects, and we don't know whether this is like an actual medical health condition, or if it's perhaps magical realism, or there's definitely some kind of magical realism element to it, so it's difficult to see. And I've got to the stage and I'm still not quite sure where we're going. And we kind of have this different perspectives told from different things. So the actual book, the Book of Form and Emptiness, is a narrator in this story. And we also have other inanimate objects as narrators. We have a pair of scissors, a few different other things. And I just don't think that part was really working for me, to be honest. I know there's been quite a few different kind of narrators in the Women's Prize shortlist and the long list. Particularly in The Island of Missing Trees, and it really worked for me there. I absolutely loved that book, but this one on the other hand, it just wasn't working for me, and yeah, my interest was just waning. And I think it's much too long. It's a really long story. It's 546 pages, so normally if I'd read about 200 pages I'd normally be about halfway, 2/3 of the way through, but as it is such a chunky book, I thought it's probably time to put this one down, because yeah, I'm just not really enjoying it. But I am a bit disappointed because I really wanted to really love the Women's Prize for Fiction winner, and it's just a shame that I didn't enjoy this one. I did say to myself, as I just said, that when it won the Women's Prize, I thought I'm definitely going to pick it back up. But I have since putting this book down, I think I've read 3 other books, read them all the way through cover to cover, and I've also DNF'd a few other books. I am DNFing books left, right and centre recently. Just so many books aren't working for me. And yeah, I just thought there really is no point trying to finish this story if I'm not enjoying it, despite it winning the prize, because I'm probably not going to give it a very high rating, and it's not really going to be fair and reflective if I've not been enjoying it. So yeah, I'm just gonna put this one down. Potentially in the future I might pick it back up, but honestly, I mean, who am I kidding? That's not going to happen, is it? So yeah, so that's that one. If you have read this book, I would love to know what you thought of it, especially as it's won the Women's Prize. I personally would have loved it if The Island of Missing Trees would have won, or Sorrow and Bliss. They were definitely my 2 favourite books. I've heard lots of mixed opinions on this novel, I would say. I've heard lots of people thinking it's absolutely wonderful, very much connecting to it, and really enjoying the inanimate object of the book and the different objects as a narrator, and really getting a lot out of it, and really enjoying the discussion on mental health. And I've heard a lot of people more like me not really enjoying it and finding it very long and finding your interest waning. So I think this one's a bit of a Marmite book, to be honest. I think it's splitting a lot of opinions, but I think it's really nice that it did win, in the sense that I watched the Women's Prize reaction of everyone, and I saw her acceptance speech, and it was really lovely, and I think it's great that she's won. It's just not my cup of tea, so that's absolutely fine. So that is that one. So the next book that I've DNF'd recently is Here Goes Nothing by Steve Toltz, and I haven't read very much of this one. I have only read 77 pages, but I just kind of had no particular interest in where this story was going to go. I didn't feel connected to any of the characters, and I just didn't really care, to be honest. Now, initially I was interested in this one because the premise sounded really interesting. It's an exploration of an afterlife, and it isn't heaven or hell or purgatory or anything else like that. It's its own kind of exploration of an afterlife where people die, and it's essentially a next step that you experience, and we don't know what happens after that. And it's kind of run as a normal life in the sense that there's people there who have jobs, and it's their job to process you into this new arrival and all of that kind of stuff. And I did think it was really interesting, and I was quite gripped in the beginning. I thought the first sentence was really interesting, actually. I'll read it to you. It was, "Nobody was ever thinking about me. Now that I'm dead, I dwell on this kind of thing a lot. How often I made life choices to avoid the disapproval of those who hadn't even noticed me standing there. How I longed to be liked by the very people I disliked in case finding me objectionable was contagious and would spread throughout the general population. How, and here's the sad truth, if all my reversals of fortune had been private, I'd have been mostly fine with them. So I thought that was initially really interesting. It's always interesting when a book starts and the narrator is someone who has died. I haven't read many books like that, and it's always a theme that I'm really interested in. But yeah, it just didn't work for me here. The three main characters we have are the man who has died, and he has a wife as well. And then there's also a man that comes to their house one day, and he has grown up in this house, and now he would like to have a little look around the house because it's where he grew up. And then he tells them that he is going to die because he has a terminal illness. And it kind of goes from there. I didn't get too much further. And honestly, that was just because I didn't really like any of those three main characters. None of them are very likeable. Like I say, I don't feel connected to any of the characters at all. And it just kind of got a little bit bleak and a little bit depressing. And afterwards, I had a little look at some of the people's reviews, and lots of people say it gets even more depressing. And I think COVID comes up quite a bit in this one too, in the sense that we're having a pandemic. So obviously this kind of afterlife is very busy, and it's understaffed and underfunded and all of those ideas. So yeah, I'm glad I put this one down because I don't think it's really my cup of tea. Yeah, it's just not what I thought it would be. I was expecting more of a, like The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and like an exploration of what happens, you know, after death, like that idea. It's not exactly the same, but you know, it's got similar kind of themes. And it just wasn't what I was expecting. So yeah, that was that one. I actually haven't heard anyone actually really talking about this book. So if you have read it, I'd love to know what you thought of it. So yeah, that's all the ones I've DNF'd recently. It really has been a lot of books recently. I just picked up so many books. I'm like, I'm really not enjoying it. So yeah, I do have a part 1 of this, the original books that I DNF'd in 2022. So I will link that down below just in case you like hearing about DNFs and if you like hearing about rant reviews. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you liked it, and please do subscribe if you'd like to see more of me talking about books. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.